The worst thing to happen to me on stage was when I cut my finger off. I was doing a rope trick on stage. Nice routine with very sharp scissors. I was about to cut the rope, but I cut the whole tip of my finger off. And the tip of my finger was sitting on these scissors. I started to get faint, there's blood everywhere. And the audience started to applaud. I said, ladies and gentlemen, I think I cut my finger off. They take me to the hospital, and Mike Tyson's cut man was in town. And he sewed my finger back on. And you can't tell, it's like really amazing. But, you know, I went over Niagara Falls. I was in an imploding building. I did all these crazy things. I'm totally safe. I do a rope trick and I end up in the hospital. The Vanishing Airplane. My first special was on ABC, introducing the fall season, and it was really frightening. I had all of the celebrities of the time, Kate Jackson and Adam Rich from 8 is Enough, and Howard Cosell, all the stars of the ABC season I introduced. And Donnie and Marie, they were also professional. I didn't know what to do with my hands. It was like really this crazy thing. But they gave me this chance to be on TV. And my specialty was really telling stories with magic. I wouldn't just vanish a woman in a box. I'd vanish her in a shower, and I'd do the shower scene from the movie Psycho. I would do a sailor number like On the Town, kind of the Bernstein show. I would do amazing stories that dealt with Sam Spade and combining magic with things that were kind of relevant to me at the time. After the ABC show, CBS picked me up, and I was telling my storytelling magic on these specials. And on the second or third special, or maybe it was fourth special, I vanished in an airplane, and that changed everything. People really enjoyed the big spectacle of it all.
This shot won't cut away. You'll see it as if you were there, with absolutely no camera tricks.
And I was really surprised by it. I thought, you know, you like that, this big illusion, and you don't like all these stories which are so important to me? And they did. They just liked the whole idea of the simple creation, the simple spectacular thing. And the airplane was the first of those events. I remember it was the next day incredible. It was like the internet before the internet. It was like being viral around the world. And people talked about that illusion. And we had it surrounded by people. The airplane, it was a Learjet. People remember it as a 747. And I say, okay, that's okay. It was really just a Learjet, a smaller plane. But it was surrounded by a whole audience of people holding hands, blindfolded. The silhouette of the airplane was on the front of the box. You saw the people moving in the airplane silhouette there, and then it vanished. And it was cool. We talked to the people in the environment to really make sure the credibility was there. And it got an amazing reaction.
I couldn't believe it. If I'm sitting at home, I could think of some way to get out of it. But I was right here, and there's no way that plane could have left.
Taking the magic outdoors, putting it in a world that was familiar to everybody, made a big difference. I think having it on an airstrip, we've all been on an airstrip, maybe not walking on the airstrip, but witnessing it in a non-theatrical environment really changed things. So I think that's one of the factors for sure. The Statue of Liberty disappears. After the airplane disappeared and the reaction it got, I said, what am I going to do next? How am I going to make this vital and important? And, you know, all my magic had a heart to it. All my magic had a kind of a personal meaning, and the airplane didn't. It was just a big thing vanishing. So when the idea of the Statue of Liberty came along, it was my opportunity to share the idea of taking freedom for granted, to use an illusion for a metaphorical way. And vanishing the Statue of Liberty was an amazing thing. We spent a number of years on it. I worked with Frank Capra. I asked Frank Capra to help me write the dialogue from it. And Frank Capra was kind of cantankerous. He was a very famous fighter. He was a diminutive size, but he was this genius of the cinema and one of my idols. And I went to him and I said, I want to make the Statue of Liberty disappear to show how important our freedom is. And he says, okay. And I said, well, would you help me? I want you to help me write the dialogue for this, because your studio is Liberty Films, all the movies that I loved, you made, you wrote. Would you help me? He says, I'll help you, but on one condition, that when you attempt to do it, you fail. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, you're going to try to do this thing. You'll set up the whole thing and you're going to try to do it. And you're going to show that liberty cannot disappear. And you're going to fail. And I said, well, Mr. Capper, I think CBS won't like this idea. And I spent 4 hours arguing with Frank Capra, believe it or not. And I saw the same guy that would fight the head of the studio, Harry Cohen, to try to get his way on his films. I got to experience that as a 20-year-old, silly kid. But finally I convinced him. And he helped me write the dialogue for that segment of the show where it talks about how important our freedom is and how we take it for granted and so forth. So I had Frank Capra as my co-writer on the Statue of Liberty vanish.
I thought if we faced emptiness, where for as long as we can remember that great lady has lifted up her lamp, why then we might imagine what the world would be like without liberty, and we'd realize how precious our freedom really is.
But that was only one problem. The real problem was getting permission to do it. The park department said no, and I think they were right. Here's this guy saying, I'm going to make the statue disappear. Will you help me do it? And the Parks Department said, we don't want you to do it. Get out of here. And I said, well, please, I've got this great idea. Finally, I was doing lots of shows at Ford's Theater in Washington for various different presidents. And Reagan was the president at the time. And I became kind of friendly with Ronald Reagan. I said, I've got this idea of showing how important our freedom is and how fragile it is and how we shouldn't take it for granted. And will you help me? Can I get permission? Everyone said no to me. And he thought about it and he said, okay, you should go for it. So Ronald Reagan gave me permission to vanish the Statue of Liberty, which is pretty awesome. So I got Ronald Reagan, I got Frank Capra, and I've got this big, beautiful lady, in the harbor there that I've got to make disappear. So then we had to figure out how to do it and make it really wonderful. And we did, and it worked out pretty good. It was really, really great. And it really kind of is one of our things in our cultural time. And it was torture for me. The whole thing was torture, but it was glorious torture. It was really worth doing. That jacket will probably not be seen in GQ this month. Bill Ballou was the designer of that, the costume designer for the show and that jacket. He's the same guy that did the famous Elvis high collar, thing, kind of iconic. I think it's due for a comeback. Walking through the Great Wall of China. I was always looking to take magic and bring it further than where it had come from before. Houdini had walked through a brick wall on stage. And a friend of mine said, Houdini did that. I think you've got to walk through the wall. What is the wall in the world? It's probably the Great Wall of China, built to keep armies from going through. So we started working on that idea, and the idea of collaborating with the Chinese government and the Chinese television networks was an interesting challenge too. And we went there slightly before Big Bird went there, and collaborated with them. And it was really a wonderful experience. They'd never seen a lot of the same equipment before. They had the best equipment because they could afford it, but they didn't know how to use it. So we taught them how to use Steadicams. We had a Luma crane, this big crane that would do the whole illusion in one shot. without cutting away. That was very important. To make the magic credible, we'd have to show the entire illusion without any cuts or breaks in it. And there was a crane developed at the time. There was the newest thing called the Luma crane, which was a head that could turn, a camera head that could turn, and that could move anywhere you wanted to move. And we brought that to China, and it was really, really cool. And we worked side by side with the Chinese technicians and so forth. I understand now how the Great Wall was built now, because I saw there is no OSHA in China. There is no rules of safety in China, at least at the time. So you'd have 200 people climbing on top of each other, carrying gigantic crates over the wall. It was incredible when you don't care about safety. But they were able to accomplish stuff you could never imagine. You know, here we have all these rules. At that time, there was no rules, and it was really eye-opening. A little bit scary, but it was pretty cool.
One of my favorite parts of that special is your assistants, including the one that's holding the sort of like radar machine. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I would always layer things in my illusions. You know, with the Statue of Liberty, I had cameras. I was promoting Kodak cameras at the time, Kodak's Polaroid camera. They had their own version of Polaroid. They later got sued for $2 billion and lost to the Polaroid Corporation because they kind of took too much of the patent. But I was their representative at the time at Kodak, and so I had all these cameras around the statue, simultaneously taking these instant pictures around the thing. I did the same thing at the Great Wall. We had radar, and you could hear my heartbeat as I went over the wall. We thought many layers of ideas were important to make it more credible. You know, we had the wall inspected, and, you know, the wall is, lots of it's in disrepair. It's kind of sad. But it's really beautiful. What's good about it is very beautiful. And it did stop Genghis Khan from coming through, but not this little Jewish kid from New Jersey. You know, I was able to get through there. But I think having all these different steps made it better. You know, we had a moment where I was trying to push through it into spandex, and you know, today, of course, I would do it in a different way. You know, you always look back and go, I wish I changed that or that. You know, like every actor would look at a performance and go, I wish I didn't do that. But you know, overall, I think it's pretty good work.
What do you wish you had done differently?
Well, always different haircuts. Always that. The escape from Alcatraz.
This must have been inspired by Houdini, at least in part.
Houdini was probably the iconic escape artist, you know, the person that made that idea important. You know, I'd done a few different escapes, but Alcatraz seemed to be, you know, pretty formidable challenge. And we did it as layers and layers and layers. How would you escape from guard dogs, you know? You'd produce a cat. How would you get out of a cell that had a certain kind of lock? Well, you'd form a key with your hands to make it. How would you get through bars? Well, you'd penetrate through them. Of course you would. And at the end, how would you get off of an island that's shark-infested waters and very cold water, and then in the bay? What would you do? And, you know, you'd have to become a guard, you know, and I became a guard at the end, disguised myself and took my cat and got out of there. There's some really unique illusions in that thing. Really, you know, the penetration through the bars is pretty good. The cat production's pretty good, and my getting away at the end is not bad. To make it interesting, I had timed explosives, one in the cell, one in the hallway, that would go off to give it a little bit of a kind of a ticking clock effect. And I had rehearsed the straitjacket escape. The whole thing was rehearsed on stage. I had a cell on stage. I had the straitjacket on stage. Even the ending scene I would do on stage as I would travel to kind of prepare for this. And I did that with every special. I wouldn't just go and shoot a TV special. I'd do it live. So I'd hear the audience reaction. I get used to doing it. And the escape from the straitjacket was with a bomb in the cell with me. And when I went to Alcatraz, the timing was different. And I didn't know why the timing was different. And I would get out and the timing was wrong. And I realized that on stage, when I would do it, there was an exit sign in the back of every theater. There's many exit signs. And I'd focus on that exit sign. And I'd escape focusing on the exit sign. And I would get out in a certain amount of time. But in Alcatraz, there are no exit signs. And it changed everything. It changed how I did the piece. So look at next time you're in prison, you'll see no exit signs. Using a helicopter was the only way to not get caught. That would be my theory of this whole thing. So in order to have a helicopter available, that have to be a helicopter that was trying to keep me in as opposed to keeping me out. So for me to become a guard, to transform into a guard, to be found all in one camera shot. If you look from the beginning, if I get into this box, there's no cuts. The box blows up, the camera looks underneath the table, follows the guards out of the building, try to find me, and I get in the helicopter and I'm gone. So all that is one complete shot, no cuts, on Alcatraz, which is pretty awesome. I got to sleep in Al Capone's cell. The cell that I escaped from was Alvin Creepy Karpus's cell, which is pretty fun. And we had real guards there who were there at the time of those guys. You know, they were in their 70s or 80s at the time, but they were kid guards there. It was so much fun hanging out with them and learning about the whole experience there. It's a kind of amazing place. The explosive encounter.
You won an Emmy for your costume.
I did. What was my costume in that? We've won 21 Emmys, which is pretty cool. I didn't realize the costume from my explosive building illusion was one of them, but that's interesting. That escape was really awesome to do. There's only one take. You can only do it once. We asked permission to use a church parking lot to shoot it from. You can see the building from this church parking lot. And the church said no. They thought magic was demonic or they have some kind of anti-spiritual thing with what I was doing. And I explained, no, I'm an illusionist. I'm trying to bring joy to the world. This is not, nothing like that. They said, no, we talked to our board. We can't use our church parking lot to shoot this thing. I said, okay. Well, hundreds of thousands of dollars later, because we had to shoot in another direction, we had to shoot from a roof of a garage. It was the other angle of the building to get it. The church was over here, the building was here. In order to do that, you'd have to go and rent a camera crane to go across the parking lot and up to the top of this parking lot over here to be able to shoot it. Okay, so the church cost me a lot of money, even though I'm sure they were a little nervous about me using the parking lot anyway. So we do this illusion, and the illusion is, I should really call it an escape. It takes place in one camera shot. And the McConkie brothers did Bonfire of the Vanities and Goodfellas, all these long, very famous camera shots, which they did after my thing, which is kind of cool. My thing was broadcast before any of those very famous Scorsese movies were done with these fantastic camera shots. But they are the ones that showed me getting into the safe, backed out of the building, onto the camera crane, onto a building, all in one take, to see if I escaped or not. That day, there was a lot of wind. We couldn't turn back. We did the escape, and they run out of the building, and the wind's blowing, and they get on top of the thing, and the wind, as the building implodes, with no retakes, obviously, the building implodes and becomes dust. And that dust blows right over the church. We would have had no escape. It would have been a total bust, because if we were to get permission from the church and shoot from the church parking lot where we wanted to and see a building implode, the dust would have blown over us, no illusion. It would have looked like a camera trick, like a camera cut. So if you watch the video, you'll see that the whole building blows to the side, and that's where we wanted to shoot. So, we thank the church. The church did the right thing for us, and we appreciate their efforts. Music is very important to everything I do. If you look at every piece of work that I've done, music is, I study it like Tarantino when he makes a movie. When I heard he does, I said, well, that's what I do. I just really spend years to find the right piece of music for each little thing. I always thought the whole idea of a building imploding was sort of classical in nature. Just to watch a building go in slow motion like that was operatic. It was classical, and I found a Mozart piece I thought would really fit that. And it starts out with me putting a DVD in a DVD. Remember DVDs? There's a little round disc you put in a thing, and anyway, I put it as a DVD, newfangled thing, and you start the DVD, and it begins all of the action. And it ends off with Talking Heads, I think, burning down the house. It's kind of obvious, an obvious playoff. Music is really key about this. The whole juxtaposition between this piece of classical music and these brilliant camera operators running out of a building, and people calling up cable because there's no radio control or Bluetooth connection to the thing, and you couldn't trust if it made a disconnection during this one chance of having a building implode. Contrasting with this music that's classical, I thought was kind of nice. And it was a good day. The Niagara Falls Challenge. What things in our life that we can visually see are formidable challenges? A building implosion is pretty formidable. A waterfall, like Niagara Falls, seemed to be a good adversary, So we designed a whole thing where I had to slowly get out of a contraption going down the rapids into, Niagara Falls, with a jet ski that I have to get on to go back. And we put tracks into the rapids of Niagara Falls a week before we were to shoot this. And these steel, thick tracks became like spaghetti. They literally twisted in the current. Steel. And I didn't sleep for the whole week up to shooting this thing. We had to find another way of doing this, and just the fear of that much power was something we didn't expect, didn't plan for. So instead of going down a ramp into the rapids, we had to be placed with a helicopter and dropped with a helicopter in there. Also not very good. Every night was really sleepless for me. It was really not, I thought it was going to be this is going to be, the end of it. But we did it. Prior to that, we rehearsed this ending with me on a rope coming up from the falls. And we hired a stunt person to do rehearsals so we could shoot rehearsals with a stunt. Obviously, I was going to do the real event. We had a stunt person to do the rehearsals of it. And he did it once, and then he refused to do it after that. And I said, why? And him and the helicopter pilot said, we have no out strategy. When you have a helicopter and doing helicopter stunts, there's a ground underneath you, and you can somehow land onto the ground. But hovering over rocks and a waterfall, there's no out strategy. You're done. There's not even a chance of doing this. So I was the only one that got to do it. And because I'm stupid, it was amazing. It was just amazing. Imagine holding onto a rope and having Niagara Falls 3 feet in front of you. Literally, the water's rushing down like this giant force of nature, literally force of nature, like a curtain in front of you, and splashing you, and with Niagara Falls there, and coming up. It's unbelievable. No one who gets to experience that, nobody. And the amazing thing is, my hair was totally dry. Magic.
So to me, almost even more terrifying than seeing you plunge over the edge is seeing you just flying in the helicopter.
Yeah. Hanging onto a rope, coming up from the bottom, middle of Niagara Falls was the most dangerous part of the whole thing, really, at the end of the day. But it was a horrifying beginning and a very happy, relieved ending. Don't have to do it again.
So let's talk a little bit about the contraption that you're put in, because it wasn't enough for you to just be tossed over the edge. You had to light it on fire.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, we did a lot of stupid things, lit it on fire. I was supposed to get out before the, kind of perils of Pauline, I have to get out before and jet ski back, which of course didn't work out. But we had fire, we had all that stuff going, but it was a really thing that I just don't have to do again. Flying. History is very important to all of us, and I like seeing the root of things, what came before me, what challenges people have had before. In the flying illusion, we had film, which had been seen before, but kind of interesting to see together, of people attempting to fly and failing. The amazing thing is those people invited news crews to see them fly with their airplanes and contraptions and wings and so forth. And they never tested it. Who would invite the press to come see you when you hadn't rehearsed it? Maybe because I'm a magician, I think things through carefully, that I'll rehearse and try and test and double check, look at the takes beforehand before inviting the world to see it. Well, these people invited the world to see them, and they failed miserably and comedically a bit. But they brought people to see them when they weren't sure that it was going to work. So we thought that was good. And it was kind of in contrast to this really kind of balletic flying that I developed. I think the flying illusion changed magic in many ways because it really became an aspirational thing. It wasn't, you don't wake up in the morning and want to make an elephant disappear. I don't think anybody wakes up and, I'd like to saw my girlfriend in half. I don't think that's not normal, I don't think. But flying people do dream about, So to do that illusion, to do it justice, I want it to be as good as a dream that people have. And if I did that, people would respond in a very strong way. And they did. People would kind of get emotional in the audience watching me fly. Men would cry when they watched me fly. The music played a part of it, but also just the fact that I made it look like I imagined it, and I imagined. And it's a huge dream of mine. And it's a dream shared by many people. Because I'm a magician, I couldn't just fly. I had to prove there were no wires or magnets or anything like that. So I looked for every single way to disprove it. We had hoops, around me. We had a plexiglass box, because that's the most understandable way of containing the object that would be flying. And it's something that we developed. My father, in fact, suggested this particular hoop pass that could work. These two hoops that were linked together. That was my father's idea. So I kind of looked back and kind of smiled and thank him, for that contribution. I'm like a film director. I have a team of people, and we collaborate on ideas, we test things and trial and error. That took about 7 years to get that right. that illusion. But it was worth it. It really still looks pretty good. Having a bird fly with me and just to kind of be an aspirational thing that I would fly with. We toured for 20 years with that illusion. And we'd travel with the bird too. We'd have an eagle with his own bunk in the bus with a camera on him, and he is a free flight bird. He'd fly around the city and fly back to us using falconry, the falconry kind of system of that. Today I probably wouldn't do it because I feel a bit differently about using animals in entertainment. But at the time it was cool, and it was really a really quite beautiful thing. In England, Princess Di came to the show with William and Harry. They were 11 and 13 years old, and I flew as the finale of my show, and it went horribly wrong. So they're in the audience, and I begin this piece by levitating up, and I'm frozen in the air, immobile, can't move. And I don't know what to do. I look out of the crowd, and there they are. And the audience can't hear me because my mic is off for them, but my crew could hear me. And I say, close the curtain, please. And the curtain slowly, painfully closes like this. And I say, leave my mic on. I'm talking to the audience through the curtain, and ladders are coming out to allow me to not be suspended in the air, frozen in space. And as they're getting me down, I say, ladies and gentlemen, stay in your seats. It's going to take 5 minutes. I want you to see this piece because I really think it's pretty good. And 5 minutes take place, and I continue to fly, and it goes beautifully. So I had royalty in the audience, and on stage, a royal up. Portal. What are you going to do when you've done so much stuff? Well, you're going to teleport people. How am I going to teleport people? Make it, transcoastal, or to go from one country to another. If you can make that credible and believable, how would you do that to make an audience really convinced, even for that moment, that you're transporting somebody in a Star Trek fashion to another place? Can you make that happen? So that's a big challenge for me. So we spent 2 years on that, on the road. And after every show, I'd interview people after the show. What did you believe? What didn't you believe? What did you hate? Was that credible? And just to find what little proofs would make it so it would be acceptable and believable. Whether it's a signature on your body that would match what you'd see in the other place, a Polaroid that would match that exists. What would be the things that would convince you that it was really happening and not just one big camera trick? That illusion, the portal illusion, was a big arm that was over the audience. So I'm not vanishing a person on stage. I'm vanishing over the audience, suspended, with me and a person vanishing. Pretty good. It's a pretty good illusion. Totally invented from scratch. Doesn't exist in any magic book. And so that illusion's got to be good. And the reappearance has to be good. And the credibility of whether the person really went someplace else has to be believable. So years of trial and error of getting people's opinions, and finally you get it to work, and finally people believe it. And then you have to bring the person back, or I've got to come back from that remote island. So we thought, wow, what layers can we put on that? It'll be raining on the island, and I'll make it rain in the when I come back, it's going to rain in the theaters. People are kind of, welcoming the rain coming back from the Hawaiian island or the Bahamian or wherever I went that time. So it was an amazing idea that reached very, very far and finally got it to be workable and acceptable. I've done reunions a lot in my work. My current live show has me and my father kind of making amends in its own way. Spoiler alert, forget about this when you come see my show. But it's a theme that somehow I keep going back to. I guess I like Field of Dreams. It struck me. My mother, my father. I was an only child, so that relationship keeps informing a lot of my storytelling, and that's okay. They say, write what you know, and I know that. The Mystery of the 15th Star. I've been doing a lot of work with the Smithsonian. It's a fantastic organization, larger than you can possibly imagine. There's thousands of museums all over that are supervised by them. They're helping with our efforts to help the people in the Bahamas right now. We're working on saving the culture with the Smithsonian. They're just great people. And they wanted me to do an event with them. And we discussed this on Flag Day. They have the Star Spangled Banner. The Star Spangled Banner is an actual flag that Francis Scott Key saw waving with the bombs bursting in midair and wrote our national anthem. The actual flag is the size of this room. You guys can't see it at home, but the size of this room, gigantic flag. It's missing a star. It's missing the 15th star. And they told me it's missing the 15th star, and of course, I'm me. So I go, okay, now you're in my world. Now I got to do something with that. I can probably make that star reappear. So I went to work. A year later, I have an illusion where I can reproduce the star that's missing. And in my own metaphorical way, show how important us being united is, and how, cooperation between states and cultures and all this coming together in one unified form, we are stronger that way. Each star represents a state in our union. So to restore that star has a great value. And that illusion of making that star appear also is part of the day where we're naturalizing 15 citizens. So we have immigrants coming here, becoming citizens on the same day I'm making that star appear. So it was a really warm kind of thing to do, and the illusion's not bad, and it fits in my wheelhouse for sure. Currently, we're working on things that are really, really remarkable. I love technology. I love technology and art, combining them together. In my show now, I have spaceships and dinosaurs and aliens and time travel, things that aren't in the magic books that exist. But we're developing new things and new technology, which you're going to get to use someday. I get to use it for a while to make it wonderful. But eventually, it'll be part of human life, but it's really, really awesome, and in magic, that's been a pattern. Magicians have used radios and communication devices to read people's minds. Then now we have a cell phone, but this existed as the first smart home to exist was a magic trick. A door that opens by itself was an electromagnet magic effect. Now every grocery store has it. So magicians are at the forefront of creating new technology, which eventually they can't use anymore. It becomes part of the real world. And I'm doing that right now. This illusions that are really wonderful that I'm working on, which will have actual use in society someday. But first, I get to exploit them as pieces of wonder.